Hi, I'm Alicia, and welcome to episode 2 of the Applecrafts podcast about mainly knitting and crocheting. And near the end of each episode, I may throw in a little bit of gardening or baking or cross stitch or something else that I'm working on that isn't really knitty or crochet related. You can find me on Facebook and Twitter as Applecrafts, and you can find me on Instagram as Applecrafts_mid_Tennessee. I'm also on Ravelry as Chris Paul 97. And I'm contemplating changing that name, but you have to throw numbers in there now, and I don't really know if I want to bother, but we'll see what happens. As you can see, if you watched last week's podcast, I still have this going on behind me. I'm going to get shelving up pretty soon. We just bought the wood for it, and we got it all cut. I think it's called a white wood, but it's blonde and it's really pretty. And so I'm trying to figure out if I want to stain it or if I want to put a clear coat stain thingy on it or just leave it bare. I don't know. I guess I'll figure that one out. But hopefully next time when I podcast, I'll have the shelves up and then you can see all my yarn instead of seeing these things. So I have an agenda for today. Today's agenda, I'm going to look at my notes, are finished objects, works in progress, new cast-ons, some recent yarn that I've dyed, acquisitions, and then all things personal. So you'll see I'm wearing this purple hat today. This is not a recent finished object. I actually made this almost a year ago. It's called Stacked. It was a free pattern on Ravelry, but now it's gone. But there's a lot of other similar patterns. I think there's one called Worm, and then there's one that's going around called CC Copycat, and there's all different types. But I mean, you can see that it goes in layers of stockinette, and actually it's all stockinette. It's just you're wrapping and turning and going up, and it's a slouchy. And I live in this thing, and I really need to make a new hat, and I don't know what I want to make yet, so I've just been living in this thing until I find a hat that I like that's different and I can learn something new, a new technique, and then live in that hat for a while. But the actual finished object is right behind me. It's the Chasing Blizzard. And I've got a picture of the original. This is all in black and white, guys, because I don't have any color on my printer, and I probably won't get any color because if you know anything about printers and color, it's uber expensive, and yeah. So this is the original. That's on the Ravelry page. This is mine. And the original pattern calls for a sock weight. Yeah, sock weight yarn. And this is with Lion Brand Vanna's Choice. And the light color is in linen. And the contrast color is in cranberry. And because I'm using a worsted weight yarn instead of a sock weight yarn, I didn't go all the way like in this pattern, because obviously this is like 2-3 times the size of a sock weight. So I ended up stopping about here, which if you look at the picture isn't a whole lot, but you know, let's look at this. So it starts here, and you got all this garter. The whole thing's gartered, by the way, which is nice if you're learning how to make shawls. And then, oops, backwards. And then you start going into these rows, eyelets, and then some stripes and eyelets, and then some mesh, and then it ends in a picot bind off. And you had a choice between a picot bind off or a regular bind off, and I decided to do a picot bind off because I've never done one before, and I like to use patterns that I'm learning something from, but I don't want to have something that's too hard. So if it's 1 or 2 things that I'm learning from a pattern, I'm all about it, because I want to gain my knowledge, because of course. But I'm glad with this stop where I stopped, because my goal was to get it where it just wrapped around once, but loosely around my neck. Or my husband's neck. I actually made this for him. And I like this pattern because you can use it, you know, it's good for men or women, just depending on the colors. And when I was taking pictures of this shawl, actually, I was playing around with the hues, you know, because see all the different colors you can get out of it. And it looks good in like any color, which is awesome. So if you're looking for, you know, a shawl to do that's relatively easy, you know, I highly recommend. It's a free pattern on Ravelry. I don't know if I said Chasing Blizzard by Katie Gimenius. Hope I didn't butcher that. But, yeah. So I just need to block this. It hasn't been blocked at all. I'm just going to give it a light block just to open up the eyelets and the mesh and stuff. So I think right now it's probably at about 62, 63 inches. And so I expect it to grow another 4 to 5 inches all around. I knitted it on US 9 5.5 millimeter shaggy red lace. Oh my god. And I think that's all I have to say about this one. But I really like this. It's good for winter. Of course, we're going into spring now, but this will definitely be put away for later in the year, and I'm sure it'll get a lot of use. And I think maybe I'll knit this again, and I'll use a DK or a recommended sock weight just to see how the rest of it looks, you know, because I only stopped halfway through, so, you know, but that gives you an idea if you decide to go to a heavier weight yarn, just how much of the pattern you're not actually going to be knitting. And I think that's all I have for finished objects. I'm still working on my Abalone shawl from last week. That's in my Zoe's bag with my aliens, my tote bag. Oh, no, it's not. I'll be right back. Okay, back now. My Abalone shawl is actually on my desk across the room, and I didn't bring it over. Still working on the Abalone shawl that I showed last week. It's also a free pattern on Ravelry, and the designer is Carly Denning. And as you can see, it's just contrasting rows of purple and black, and the purple grows in space as you work all the way down the shawl. This is made with Loops and Threads Wool-like in the colorway purple. And it's a light fingering. And the original yarn for this is a lace. So pretty similar. I did a little bit of modification on this shawl. I followed the pattern and the contrasting rows till about maybe the third section. Then on the fourth section, I kept the same length on the contrasting row, but I added rows here in the purple. And then I just continued to add rows as you go down. And then once I got to this really big part down here, where I've got really big sections of purple, I also added some garter rows in the contrast. But I am on the last section now, and I've got maybe another inch or two to go on here, and then it has a pointy eyelet lace type of border, and I actually have, I don't know if you'll be able to see it again with my black and white photo, but this is the border of the shawl that was on the Ravelry page. And then this will be done, so hopefully by next time I podcast, you guys will get to see that. These are knitted on US 3.25 Chiagu red lace needles. I really like my red lace needles. I got a little story about these needles, actually. when I first started knitting, I went to a big box store and I got the Susan Bates and Boy needles. And I gravitated toward that because I've been crocheting since I was a kid, and those were the hooks that I used were Susan Bates and Boy. I love them. I still have the original ones that I bought when I was 14 years old. They last and they're great and I like them. So I went to the knitting needles, and they make great hooks, but the knitting needles not so much. Sorry guys. Now I will say that they will hold up if you're learning how to knit. And usually when you're learning something, you don't want to invest in really good stuff until you kind of know what you're doing. And so I suggest that if you are learning to knit, that the Susan Bates and Boy, they're a decent buy. The problem that I have with those is that after you've knitted for a little bit, the tips start to wear down and the color starts to rub off, and then you've got particles of gray from the metal, and I don't know what they're doing with that metal that it rubs off on your skin, but it gets on your skin. And of course, if it's getting on your skin, it's also getting on your product. So you don't want that. But I decided I wanted to get something new, and the only other option I had in the big box store were the bamboo ones, and I'm not really keen on using wood. So I went on Amazon because who doesn't go on Amazon, right? And looked up some Chiagu because I was watching a lot of podcasts, and a good number of podcasters at the time were on Chiagu red lace. And I was like, why not? Oh my god. Like butter. Wow. Such a difference, night and day, between using the Susan Bates and the Boy and the Chiagus. So of course I fell in love because, you know, it's Amazon, and, you know, 1 day, 2 day if you're on Prime, so, you know, why not? So all my newer needles are on Chiagu red lace. I do still actually have my Boys and my Susan Bates because they're all straight needles, and I actually haven't converted to any newer straight needles because I don't really use them a lot. But they still do the job. Now, the ones that are really bad, that really rubbed off, I don't use anymore. I threw those away. But otherwise, I still have my straight needles. And actually, I'm probably going to use them pretty soon because I have a whole lot of cotton in here that I'd like to use up for dishcloths. So you'll be seeing that soon. Maybe in the next podcast, I'll have a stack of dishcloths for you guys to look at because why not, right? What I'm working on right now that was in that alien bag is my Cable Baby hat. And I printed out a picture, but it's kind of washing out on the camera. I tested it before I started filming. So I will enter a picture here. And I am knitting that on this yarn that I dyed a while back. This is kind of blowing out. You could probably see it on here. It's a free pattern on Ravelry called Cable Baby by Pamela Allen. And see if I can get this right. Oh, I think I made it backward. No, that's right. Okay. So it's got rib, and then it's got a cable repeat here. You can kind of see the cable going on in here. So every so many rows, you twist the cables, and you get just a little cable thing. And the original yarn for the pattern is a fingering, and this is a fingering that I dyed up, and it's like silvers and darker silver and black spots. And I actually really like it. I actually dyed this because my husband couldn't find anything that he liked. And so I was like, well, let me see if you'll like this. And he does. So there you go. This is knitted on US 3s, 3.25 Geography red lace again. And hopefully I'll have this done in a couple days, because it only takes me about a day and a half to do a normal vanilla hat, if you will. And this only has, every so often, a little bit of a twist in the cable. So I'm thinking it might take me, I don't know, 2-3 days. I just started this last night, and I've knitted on it for maybe a little over an hour after I got the cast on real right, because I had to do 150 stitches for a cast on, 154. And so that took a while, because I don't like to leave an extra long tail if I get my counts wrong. And there actually is a tutorial on Very Pink Knits on YouTube where she shows you a little cheat by wrapping around on the knitting needle to get an exact amount. But I find that's kind of a general count, because sometimes I'm spot on and sometimes I'm not, but it could just be me. And maybe I just need to watch that tutorial again. I don't know. Oh, and while I was digging in this bag, I actually found the card that's still in here from the person who made it at Zoe's Bag Boutique. Yeah, zoesbagboutique.com. And it's one of those where if you put in the .com, it takes you to an Etsy page, I believe, because I know that there's some Etsy pages that are set up that way. But either way, she makes really great bags, really good quality. If you like the tote bag other than the zippered knitting project bags with the wristlet thing, I can't really get into those, and maybe it's because I was just always used tote bags, and so I gravitate toward tote bags. But you know, this is just beautiful. I'll talk about this forever and bore you guys to death. If I'm not already boring you to death. And another work in progress that I have. Last podcast I talked about a modified version of my Autism Spectrum blanket that I will enter a picture of here. And I finished blocking all of the pieces. That's all the pieces. It's 3 different greens. So you have your edge pieces. And gotta go down here. Your corner pieces. And another edge piece. And then the inside pieces. Here we go. These are the inside pieces. And then it's just a matter of mattress stitching it together. It is a paid for pattern on Ravelry, and 10% of it goes to charity called the Golden Hat Foundation. And the Golden Hat Foundation, from what I understand, just raises awareness that autism is not something that needs to be cured. Because a lot of, I don't know about you guys, but I was brought up to believe it was something that was curable or could be cured. And so it's just raising awareness of like enjoying the child and not trying to cure the child, but raise a child in an environment that's better suited for their environment, if that makes any sense. I don't know, but Golden Hat Foundation was recommended to me by a friend of mine who has a child with autism, and she said that that was a really great way to go, because they do that. They raise the awareness that it's not something that needs to be cured. And so I was like, right on, we'll go with that. So you can find that there on Ravelry. I'm going to look and see if I missed anything. No. Okay. Moving on. Move some stuff. I did a bunch of yarn dyeing. And if you saw my episode last week, or 2 weeks ago, you see that I got a big bag of bare yarn that I ordered that came in that day, actually. And so I had some time last week to do a little bit of yarn dyeing. And I also mentioned last time that I podcasted that I don't sell any of the yarn. And I have since changed my mind on that, only because it's a hobby that I really enjoy, and I don't want to stop dyeing yarn, but I'm not trying to be a professional yarn dyer either, if that makes any sense. But I have so much yarn already, and I have more across the room, and then I've got this. And I'm never going to get around to using all this, so I figure, well, what I'll do is I'll keep the ones that I really like that call to me, and then I will sell the rest, or try to sell the rest. So I found a website called Fibercrafty that is all about fiber. So you have spinning fiber, you've got hand spun fiber, you've got mill spun fiber, hand dyed, hand painted, pretty much anything you could think of. And there's stitch markers on there and progress keepers and all that. So I decided I was going to put whatever I didn't want to keep for myself on there, just for, pretty cheap, just so I can recoup some of the money that I've spent on it. But all that aside, I want to show you the colors that I made. And it's springtime, we're going into Easter soon. So I decided to set for a couple of colors, try to play around with some springtime tonals. Because I've never done tonals. I've pretty much, first couple times I dyed, I did speckles, or tried to do speckles. They're more like splotches with speckles. And actually I think I'm just going to own it because I like the way it looks. So, why not? But these that I dyed recently is a New Zealand Palworth Superwash DK. And what I like to do with my yarn as well is I've given all of them a garden theme because I like to garden. So yeah, so every time I don't have a color or like a name in mind. I do have a color in mind, obviously. I don't have a name in mind when I dye up colors. I just kind of let me know what it wants, So sometimes it'll be a couple days before I figure out a color name. Sometimes it's right off. I figure out, oh, you're definitely going to be this name, because you're screaming to be this name. So now I've got all these names for my yarn. And this one is going to be called Kale. And I've got lights and darks. You can kind of see it here. Strands of dark green over light green. And I like the way this one came out. It's actually pretty close to what I had in mind for a tonal, for my first time doing a tonal. I really enjoy that one. This one is Blue Aster. I've got little pops of light blue and with darker blues. There's a little touch of purple in there. And this one is Peony. So I've got light pinks and dark pinks and purples. And some of there's like maybe a little bit of blue, like so little that I probably won't even mention it. I probably shouldn't mention that there's blue in there. But yeah, I really like this one. I think this one is probably my favorite. And then, oh, that's blowing out. This is Sunshine. I think it's aptly named because it's blowing out on the screen. Ooh, that made it worse. But it's got lights and dark yellows all throughout. If you can kind of see the dark there, and then the light. I won't blind you guys anymore with the sunshine. And then I've got Edamame. Here we go. That's pretty close, even though it's blowing out too. But it's just lights and darks of greens. No other colors in there. Oh, no, I lied. I did put a little bit of blue in there. Tiny, tiny bit of blue. And then my last yarn that I dyed last week is Hyacinth. You've got light purples and dark purples. And I think I put a little blue in here too. Probably won't be able to see it though because it's really blending in with the purple in there. This one came out really nice. I was thinking about giving this one to my mom. We'll see. But that's all I have for yarn that I've dyed this week. I'm hoping to get some more yarn dyed this week. My husband's been playing around with wanting to get some yarn dyed too. So I bought a package of worsted weight for him to try out. So we'll see. He's really into trying to figure out the math behind doing a good gradient. And so it's interesting because he used to be a mechanical engineer, so he looks at everything from an engineering kind of standpoint and a building standpoint and what he can do to mechanize something, which can be a little irritating sometimes, but you know, I can't say I haven't benefited from his brain because he's certainly done a lot of building and fixing around here, and yeah, that's how he works. Acquisitions. I've got, for me, it's a lot of yarn that I've got for acquisitions because I normally don't get this many skeins of yarn. But if you watched the last podcast, I talked about us having gone away for a 4-day weekend to Lookout Mountain, Georgia. And we stayed at a bed and breakfast that was across the street from Rock City. And it was really relaxing and very quiet. Just what we were looking for. I didn't want to go and do anything touristy this time. We went there before. Last time we went anywhere together was 4 years ago. And we just wanted to just chill. So I brought some books with me. I brought some mindless knitting with me. Actually, it was the Abalone Shawl because it was just a stockinette portion. So I was like, that's what I'm bringing with me. I'm not bringing anything complicated. I want to read my book. The Olympics were on, so I finished watching like the last 2 nights of the Olympics and had a great old time. But before I left, no, I'll talk about that since we're talking about the bed and breakfast. So when we left that day, I figured, okay, well, we're right next to Chattanooga because where we're at, it's right on the line of Lookout Mountain in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I figured, well, we're leaving. We have nothing else to do today but go home. Let me see if there's a local yarn store around that's relatively close by. And there was. It was like maybe a 10-minute drive. The place is called Genuine Purl. And believe it or not, it was my first time ever going to a local yarn store because even though I'm like right outside of Nashville and the local yarn store is maybe a half hour for me, I don't like to go anywhere that's not an easy in and out. Anywhere, doesn't matter. Just because I can't stand the traffic because the traffic down here is god awful. And so the local yarn store that I could be going to in Nashville, it's really easy to get in. But there's no light. So you're sitting in the middle of a street in your car waiting God knows how long to make a left turn out to get onto the highway. Or I could take a right and go either into the college if I can make it across the road to get back out and then get on the road to go to the highway, or go across town to get back to the highway. Either way, it's kind of a hassle for me. So I don't bother with that. Which is unfortunate, but there it is. But so this yarn store, Genuine Purl in Chattanooga, was everything I thought a yarn store should be. I was surrounded by all this beautiful yarn and all these colors and just everything. And the lady there was super nice, and she asked me what I was looking for, and I was looking for indie dyed fingering or sock weight yarn. And so she showed me the area where all that was, and I kind of I was looking for lighter colors, but then I gravitated toward this one brand that was sitting there, at eye level, and it should be at eye level because it deserved to be at eye level. And if you know anything about grocery stores or whatever, the things they want you to buy the most are at eye level. Yeah, because I came home with 3 skeins of Dream. It's Dream in Color yarn, and I think the Jilly that's on there is their base. I'm not sure. But I just couldn't stop looking at this yarn, guys. It was like the most beautiful thing ever. It's so saturated and gorgeous, and it was screaming out my name. So this was the first one actually that I picked up. And it's got maroons and rose and gold, and there's like down here there's little bits of like a green gold, and I believe this is a fingering weight. Superwash merino, 100% superwash merino. 444 yards. But look at this. So then I needed a contrast color to go with that, right? So then I found this, which is actually pretty much out of my comfort zone. I know I showed you guys a pink, but you know, when you're dyeing yarn, you're just picking out whatever colors. But when you're buying for yourself, I don't know about you guys, but I tend to gravitate toward the same color scheme unless it's for an order, right? And so this is completely out of my comfort zone because I don't usually wear or use anything that's bright pink. But you got like these, it's like mauves and dark rose and light pinks and a little bit of purple in here. And this one's called Juliet's Blush. I forgot to tell you the name of this one. The first one I showed you was Hello Dolly. There we go. And so I figured, well, if I have 2 skeins of yarn, I really should get a 3rd skein of yarn, right? Because then I can make something somewhat substantial. And I couldn't figure out what I wanted to get. And I was trying to play off of colors from what were on here. And I was looking for like maybe a gold or another dark pink or something. And my husband comes up with this. Now, I know I just said I naturally gravitate toward dark ones, but I actually wasn't looking for anything in the browns because it's springtime. But this has got like dark browns and umber browns and a little bit of gold. And I put them together with the other 2. And look at that. It's like a perfect trio of yarn. And this one's called November Muse. And so now I gotta figure out what I want to make with this. I don't know if it's going to be enough to do a 3-color shawl. I would think so, considering that they're 440 yards. So that would be 4, 8, 12, 13, 20. That should be enough to do a decent sized shawl, I would think. But I'll have to look on my Ravelry favorites and see what I've got saved. Because, guys, I just organized and bundled all my patterns on Ravelry. And I don't know if this is a high number or not, but I have almost 400 patterns saved on my Ravelry for shawls and scarves alone. And then I've got a bundle for hats, and I've got a bundle for other, which is usually like, you know, like toys or whatever. And I've got a bundle for blankets and almost 400 patterns. So certainly there's got to be something in there that's 3 colors that'll fit 3,320 yards of yarn, right? Hopefully. Otherwise, I'm going to go online and buy directly from these people in Dream in Color because their yarn is absolutely fabulous. So fabulous, in fact, that as soon as I came home, I favorited their Facebook page and I favorited and followed their Instagram. All about this company all of a sudden. But before I left to go on my trip, I ordered something else online, I didn't order this online. I ordered this online, what I'm about to show you. And it's from a podcaster that I watch called Queen's Yarn Boutique. And she's a lot like me in the sense that she makes things for orders, but she's also gotten lately into knitting. So she's a new knitter, and she just got into yarn dyeing. And I think she's actually doing the yarn dyeing professionally. Unlike where I have absolutely no interest in doing yarn dyeing professionally, because I actually really enjoy just sticking to making patterns and making orders for people, because that's where most of my joy is. But I like to tinker around with the yarn dyeing. But she is selling her own yarn, and she's got 4 or 5 different bases, and everything has got a Prince theme to it, which I find awesome. And this yarn that I bought, here's her label, Queen's Yarn Boutique. This base is called Glamorous Life. And I believe that's a reference to Sheila Easton? Sheila E? Oh my god. I should know this. I really should know that, and that I'm ashamed to not actually know that. But anyway, Glamorous Life, the person who's saying that was actually someone who worked with Prince. So, but she's got a base called NPG, New Power Generation, and she's got bases for other Prince references. But let's talk about this yarn, because it was really hard for me to choose a yarn that she makes. And she's got so many beautiful colors. That woman has got a true talent for putting colors together. Because I drooled and drooled some more and had a hard time picking out a skein of yarn. And so I finally stumbled upon this one and decided I need to come home. But it's got like this fuchsia magenta that goes into oranges and golds. And then you got this fiery pop of like this orange yellow down here. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And if you can see that, it's got a little bit of stellina in it. This is 75% superwash merino, 20% nylon, 5% silver stellina, 231 yards and 100 grams. You can find her. She's got her own website now. This has Etsy on it, and I think she still actually has an Etsy shop. But all her yarn is on queensyarnboutique.com. And she's on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Ravelry, Pinterest. And I went on her site initially because she was doing a D-stash, and I figured while I was there I'd pick up that yarn too. But with her D-stash, I decided to pick up some new to me yarn, and so I picked up Barocco Vintage DK. And this is like absolutely stunning. It's just I would call this like maybe a magenta. I think it's closer to a magenta. I don't know how it's picking up for you guys, but it's pretty true to the screen, in my opinion. Maybe a cross between magenta and fuchsia. It doesn't have a color name on it, but it does say 2159 for the color. And it is 52% acrylic, 40% wool, and 8% nylon. So I'm looking forward to using this yarn and seeing what I can get out of it. How many yards is it? 290 yards. So I'm thinking I may have to find a contrasting color and then maybe make a shawl with this, because I picked up 2. So I think this with either a black or a gold or a sage green. I don't know. I'll figure it out. But it'll be stunning because this color is beautiful. I think that's actually all I have for you guys today. I'm going to end the video with a little bit of footage from my trip to the bed and breakfast. We didn't actually go into Rock City this time. The first time we went we did, but not this trip. But we did walk by it quite a lot. And so I've got a little bit of footage of a fountain that's got a couple of gnomes in it. If you look really hard, you'll see the gnomes. And I've got some footage of us going up and down, driving up and down the hill. You might be able to spot through the trees the city line. There's one point in the video where we go down the hill to go get some food, and I look up and there's like a cliff and this row of houses at the top of the cliff. So I got some footage of that, and I think that's it. So it was good talking to you guys, and I will see you in a couple weeks, and take care. Thank you. Bye.